Hey there, friends. This is Bill MacDonald, the ELAR doctor. I think that one of the most difficult struggles for students who have trouble with reading one passage is having to read two passages, a pair of passages, and be able to compare and contrast, to compare, show how they're different, and contrast, show how they're the same, compare how they're the same and contrast how they're different. And so what I did was I looked through different grade levels and I found a set of paired passages that had four questions that I felt were the hardest for the kids. So I'm going to just focus on those questions. And I think that I want to share a couple of things with you. We're going to meet two main people. And I think what happens sometimes is the students struggle with getting to know the character traits of people in a poem or a story if they don't even really know who they are themselves. And so I want to talk to you about two things real quick. I'm wearing glasses, first of all, because I need them for reading, and second of all, because that's my point of view. I need to look at the world when I'm reading through a different lens than when I'm just doing things that take place at a distance. So when I take off my glasses, the world doesn't change, just the way I see it does. So what we have to figure out is what is our point of view and what is the point of view of different people, and in this case it'll be the speaker in a poem and a character in a story. And so there's a saying that I want you to write down that will help you and your students understand when it comes to comparing and contrasting characters in two passages. It goes like this: don't judge a person until you've walked a mile in his shoes, because inside his shoes are his toes. That's an acronym that ties in, get it, laces, tie, ties in with both reading and writing. When you read about certain characters, you get to know their voice, who they are. So, what I've done is I went to Dollar Tree and I found two little paper cutout characters, and we're gonna meet two characters. Okay, when you read this fifth grade paired passage from this past year, it says read the next two selections and then choose the best answer to each question. So we have a passage called Peace and Quiet. That's the name of a story. And so in Peace and Quiet, we're going to get to know our main character, Disha or Desha, Desha. I have no idea how to pronounce the name, but that's how you spell it. And in Maple Street, which is the other passage, I'll show you in a moment, we just know that the speaker of the poem, and poems don't always necessarily have to rhyme, the main character uh, has no name, so we won't underline speaker because we don't know the name of the speaker, but we did underline Disha, Desha, Desha. So when I flip Desha over, I'm going to show this to both of you, both characters to you. Down there at the bottom of her feet, I put the word toes because that's, I said Don't judge a person until you've walked a mile in his or her shoes, inside their shoes or their toes. Well, what is the T and the O? Well, the T and the O is inside somebody's head. Inside your brain are your thoughts and your opinions, what you think or what you believe about something, your point of view and perspective, the way that you see the world. I have little question marks because sometimes we hear, but we don't really listen. What is my way of listening to myself, to other people, and the world around me? Sometimes your voice comes out in what you say. So notice I have a little mouth there. When there's dialogue, I have an opening and a quotation mark. And the reason I have this T here, whenever you're reading a passage, we will only be able to tell who's talking from what's called the tag, the said word, and the way, in other words, the way that they say something, and the person who's doing the talking. So, one way to get my voice is what I say, and another way to figure out the voice is how I say it. What are some of my mannerisms, my facial expressions? What is my body language? So, when I come down here to the heart, I want you to notice a heart looks like a V. If you tell me your emotions, you're just going to use emotion words. But a lot of times, E is in there, emotions, and there's an F hidden inside an E called feelings. We don't know how people feel from their vocabulary words. We figure out how they feel because of their actions or their reactions. So there is a saying that says actions speak louder than words. Okay? So when something happens, when there's a cause, there's sometimes an effect. The way that we react to it. The cool thing about cause and effect, C in the alphabet come before E, and causes come before effects. And in this case, because we're talking about characters, the way that I act because of something, there's an action that takes place, and then there's a reaction. And so this T here is like what I'm going to call a transition, which we'll call a teeter totter, a see-saw. And so in paired passages, we often compare to show how two people or two things in a passage, two passages are the same, or we'll contrast, compare, contrast, also in alphabetical order, cause, effect, alphabetical order, action, reaction. So what we're going to find out is that this character here, Daisha, in Peace and Quiet, has her own personal thoughts, opinions, the things that she says and how she says them, the way that she views herself and her world and the people in her life. We'll be able to tell also by some of her actions, by what she values and she loves, because that's going to be mentioned inside the passage. Let's meet the other character, and the speaker also is going to have a point of view and perspective, that he also has his toes, thoughts, opinions, emotions, senses, things you say and how you say them, the said words, and the senses is, remember, how you see and hear and taste and touch and smell, if you want to use that T as a nose. But remember, that my thoughts and my opinions are inside my head, the what I think or what I believe, what I say, or how I say it based on the said words and the person who's talking, the causes and effects, actions and reactions, compare and contrast, vocabulary words that tell me, or phrases or sentences that show me. So when they say show, don't tell, we also want to know what he values. And so the lowest question was asking about what the characters from the two different passages value. What do they love? What do they consider important or valuable? So, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the 4 questions that gave our kids the most struggles. Number 21, and I didn't pick all the questions, I just picked the 4 from both passages that seem to give your kids the most struggles. Not even half the kids in Texas understood emotions, and these were telling emotions: uncertain, surprised, thankful, and jealous. Jealous is a negative emotion, thankful is a positive emotion, surprise could be positive or negative, and uncertain means unsure, and so that's not either positive or negative. So, based on the stanza, on stanza 1, lines 1 through 13, so I'm going to underline stanza 1, lines 1 through 13 here, and label Maple Street. The speaker most likely feels. And so all I have to do is go to 1 through 13. And if you look at my hand for a second, when I read all of those lines, those 13 lines, I'm going to have to sometimes read between the lines or infer which emotion is the speaker, the person from Maple Street, this person here, how do they feel based on either what they see or what they say or what they do? So let's look at just lines 1 through 13. There it is. I've labeled it question 21. So I'm going to read you the entire thing, and I'm going to show you something that jumps off the page uh, about question number 21 that will help me. So it says, there's no doubt where our street found its name. There's no doubt about it. In other words, surety is there. Whenever you say there's no doubt, it means that you're positive about something. Found its name, the gigantic maple tree in front of Jamie Hamlin's house. So the street is called Maple Street because of the maple tree. His nose may run green all the time, green slime all year. Negative thing that she sees, negative. But, compare contrast, he shares the stale chocolate bars left over from his family corner store. If someone's sharing, you like that about that person. And besides, like I said, there's his tree. And we're going to find out that this tree that he owns, his family owns, is where she goes to do her hobby, which we'll talk about in a different question, drawing with her colored pencils in her sketchbook. Okay? So those are positive things, and all those lines are spent talking about that. So, am I uncertain about taking the chocolate? Well, she never said anything negative about it, or he. Surprised to learn the street? No, it said that there was no doubt. So I would eliminate that one. I'm thankful, possibly to have James Hamlin as a neighbor. Uh, Thankful means you're grateful. Well, yes, that's true. And so I would mention the answer if this was open ended, probably grateful or thankful. Where? Because in lines blah blah blah, that he shares chocolates and has this tree that she uses for drawing. So that's the answer. And you tell me the lines about his sharing in lines 5, 6, 7, 8. From lines 8 through 13, he talks about sharing. And so, and if this was open ended, I'd have to say, because of this, how do you, I think he feels? I'm probably grateful or thankful for him, because if it wasn't for his tree, I wouldn't be able to draw. And apparently, she likes chocolate bars because she doesn't say anything about rejecting them. So, jealous of the store he owns, not much is mentioned about the store except for the candy bars that he gives away. So, I did read both places. I underlined and labeled in both places. We're ready now to eliminate three answers. There's no negativity. Surprise that the street? No, we said because there's no doubt it's named after the maple tree. Uncertain about taking the chocolate? No, I'll take chocolate from anybody. I love chocolate. And so, in extending beyond the question, what would you want your neighbor to be able to share with you? And so, students want things they can relate to. So, to make it relative, to get to know them, pay attention. What would you like to, what do you have that you can share? And what would you wish that your neighbor had that he or she could share with you? And as you can see, that got less than 50%. So we have to figure out, based on what somebody describes, you're going to have to read between those lines and infer that the speaker feels thankful because of things that he does, that he shares, something that he shares, and something that he has. Number 25, RULES, read, underline, label, eliminate, select, extend beyond by uh, relating to it. Which topic is addressed by the author of the story Peace and Quiet that is not addressed in the poem Maple Street? Okay, so not in Maple Street. So if I just focus on one, I would focus on the not. So when they say that which topic, that's singular, is not addressed, and so have your kids put three Y's for three yeses. Three things are mentioned in Maple Street, but one thing is not. Three things are true about Maple Street, and one thing is not true. And only 54% of the kids got that incorrect. Got that correct, making the connections to personal experiences, ideas, and other texts and society. So, the importance of having somewhere to be alone. Well, if I look at Maple Street, lines 32 through 34 say, no one can see me hidden by these maple, green and paper leaves. 25A was the importance of having somewhere to be alone. That's there, so you can't say it's not there. Something can have the impact that sharing, very important word there, something you do, can have on another person. So let's go to lines 8 through 10 and see what's being shared, because it's saying we need something that's not mentioned. And lines 8 through 10, sharing the chocolate. And we just learned that I appreciate him because he's showing I'm thankful for him because he does share. So I'm going to eliminate that because that's a yes or a true. It is mentioned. The desire to practice a hobby, they're saying, is it not mentioned in Maple Street? Well, let's find out. In Maple Street, 25C, her hobby is coloring with pencils as she climbs into that tree. And you can even see towards the end that I'm creating the sketches from the spy tree. So, a hobby, what is it that you like to do? So, I think that because a lot of kids don't know what a hobby is, maybe some of the kids are going to have to realize that sometimes we're going to have to look up words that we don't understand in the dictionary to find out what is a hobby. And so my extension here would be, what is your hobby? What is something that you like to do? I love to play golf. I love fishing. I love watching Netflix and Hulu. And so I but my hobby, probably that I enjoy the most, is playing the alto sax because it's very relaxing for me. And so, getting to know your students, what are their hobbies? And so, because we're trying to get to know the voice of the speaker and the voice of Sasha, we could find out what hobby. Sasha's hobby, when you read the other passages, playing her guitar and singing a song. The hobby mentioned in Maple Street is drawing and coloring. Okay? So the only one that's not mentioned in Maple Street, frustration of living with many people, only peace and quiet has frustrations of living with family members, and you can point out the many family members, but if you look through the entire poem, there's nothing about the frustration of living with other people mentioned. So we would select D, we would fill it in, put the D on the side, eliminate the other three, and then I said that what we could do is circle your 25D in the book to make sure that your 25D in the Scantron gets addressed. Now, the lowest one in the compare and contrast the paired passages was this question number 26. And sometimes it's one word, the word value, that might have thrown your kids off. And so when you value something, you love it. That's using your feelings and your emotions. You say it's valuable to you. That's your opinion. It's important. And so, what I would do before I would start sharing is ask your kids, what do you love? What do you find valuable or important? And so the examples to pick uh, from Daisha. So let me get Daisha out. Here she is. Here's Daisha from Peace and Quiet. And she values and loves this rock. Why? because it says that it's her favorite spot, that it's a special rock to her. So, since that's the answer, I would probably have to show you where it is. Okay? Now, if you look, it says that she values a song. Just because someone is singing a song, and she's singing a song here, lean on me, because of the words I grimaced in frustration, I struck the wrong chord. Why can't I get this song right? I wondered aloud. Ugh, that sounds terrible. Lean on me when you're not strong. So it says, I lifted my guitar. There was nothing describing the positive or negativity of the guitar. When they start singing the song, the only thing that we get about the song is that it sounds terrible. And of course, she's strumming, so she's playing the guitar. So started to sing. Ah, does it say my favorite song? No. So nothing is mentioned about the value of the song or the value of the rock, and a movie is not even mentioned in the entire passage. So I've got to show you that in paragraphs 1 and 2, in paragraph, ah, a rock is valued by Dacia in paragraphs 1 and 2. How can I prove it? Give me an example that proves the answer. In paragraphs 1 and 2, there's 26. We see her write my favorite spot, a group of large rocks beneath the favorite tree. So I want to ask you, what is your favorite spot? What is your hobby? Because both of the characters have a favorite spot. The speaker loves being in the tree of her neighbor so that she can draw and be alone. The character in this story, Seisha, loves this grouping of large rocks, and I sat down on my special rock. So, because special and favorite are positive, whenever you value something, though that's a positive point of view about something. And so, since and the singing was negative, they didn't even say the name of the song, and they didn't assign any positive or negative attributes to the guitar, so I just drew a sideways arrow. So, what you might do to help kids understand that you value what is something that is the most important to you, what is a thing, because a lot of kids will say family, and since the answer is a thing, what you might have is an activity called show and tell, where the kids get to bring a thing, and I wouldn't recommend an animal because none of these are live things, and they can tell you what they value, why they value it, and they can give you examples of why it's valuable to them. So, the best one is rock. We have read it, we underlined, we labeled, we eliminated. Our extension would be finding out what the kids value. That way we can relate to this question and find out by our relationship with our kids what's relevant to them. That way they'll begin to understand what they mean by value inside a passage. Our last one, what is difference, compare and contrast between the story. One statement only describes a difference, so something that's contrasting between these two passages. So as you look at them, you can place check marks and X's. Only 55%, a little over half the kids in Texas were able to make this connection between personal experiences again, ideas in other texts and society crossing across text. So in Daisha shares thoughts about people who live in her house. And so you can see on paragraphs uh, 10 through 12, she is venting about the people who live in her house. And in the poem, the speaker's expressing thoughts about people who live in the neighborhood, lines 5, lines 21, line 26, and I think even lines 27. Let me show you that real quick. Line 5 is talking about Jamie. Line 21, Mary Ellen and Emily swinging. 26 is Paul and Carrie O'Brien doing karate moves. And so those are people who live in the neighborhood. So I proved my answer there, and I proved my answer there, because in order to get a 1, you've got to answer the question. In order to get a 2, you have to show me where you can find it and give some examples about what's different about them. So that means that at least one of the 2 statements in the other 3 answers is not true. In the story, Daisha has found a secret location her brother told her about. Nowhere in there did they say that her brother told her about this. It's her favorite location, and we don't know how she found out about it. So you can't infer that her brother found out about it. He shows up later, probably because he knows about it. If it's a secret location, he wouldn't have been able to find her, and um, we don't know who told her about it. In the speaker, the poem is worried about not having a place to spend. No, there's no worry at all. That's a negative emotion. They just like having time, a place to spend alone, so that he or she can draw. So neither one of these are true. So I would eliminate B. In the story, Daisha visits a place for a first time. I don't think you're gonna be saying that it's your favorite spot, uh, that it's your rock, if your special rock, if that's the first time you've ever gotten there. So that part's untrue. In the poem, as the speaker goes to a place that's very familiar under the tree, that part is true. But because one of the 2 statements is not true, those are not true differences about them. Letter D. Daisha is concerned, negative emotion, about an event that's planned for the future. All she talks about is the past, her frustrations about being with her family members, and the present, struggling to play a note uh, and sing a song, Lean on Me When You're Not Strong, and in the present, her brother coming and taking away her peace and her privacy. So the future makes this statement untrue. And so you're going to have to talk about the difference between past, present, and future, because the only way this would have been true is if they would have said, concerned about some things that are happening right now while she's playing the song, or in her past relationships with her family members. In D, the poem, the speaker's concerned, negative, about an event that happened in the past. No, there's no concern. There's nothing mentioned in the past at all except positive things that she's seen her neighbors doing. So concern is a negative emotion, and the only thing that she's mentioned about other people from the past were some cool things that they were doing. So in this case, neither one of those are true. And so when you check all four, the only one that's different is they're both sharing thoughts, things that are inside their head, that people who live in her house, negative thoughts, thoughts about people who live in the neighborhood, different place, and those are positive thoughts. Okay? So in one, the emotions are negative, and in the other one, these emotions are positive. Okay? There's a difference because of the place inside my house and the neighborhood, and that Daisha's emotions are positive and the speaker's Daisha's emotions are negative and the speaker's emotions are positive. So there you have it. Um, Checking out the characters of a passage. So the questions I have for you that I would love for you to put in the comment section. What is one thing that doesn't have a heartbeat that you value the most? And the other question that I would love you to put in the comment section, where is your favorite place to go for peace and quiet? The speaker loved to go inside a tree. The girl Sasha from the story loved to go to a grouping of rocks inside the forest and be on a rock because it was for peace and quiet. My favorite place, as I told you, I the hobby I value the most is probably playing the saxophone, and my place is the driving range because I'm able to just hit golf balls, relax, and relieve the stress from life. So go ahead and click like on my YouTube video. Share this with your reading teacher friends. Uh, you don't need to go to Dollar Tree to buy little people. Your kids can just draw little stick men, but make sure they're not sticks, like as in little lines, because we want to be able to draw some of the things that I drew inside. You can rewind the video so you can see some of the things that I wrote about thoughts and opinions, point of view and perspective being inside your head, the things you say and how you say them, the tag word, um, the way you hear and taste and smell, your feelings that you tell with vocabulary words or show by your actions or your reactions or your um, the cause because this happened, this was the effect, this was your what happened next. So I hope that you liked this video. And so that's one way I would help with paired passages. And it was just getting to know people in two different passages. So I would love for you to have your students get to know themselves and each other. And then that way we can compare and contrast what your students value, where they like to go, what are their hobbies, and things like that, because those are all things that were relevant to the questions in this passage. Share or tag your reading teacher friends and have a wonderful day.